Okay, how's it going today? Today I'd like to explain something. Okay. So, what is the fundamental purpose of science? Well, science is always about improving and progressing and building upon that which has been known, or proving something wrong or proving something true. It's about bringing to light new evidence. One of the problems with our modern society is the current structuring of how that research is funded and conducted. The most important thing for the future is going to be the management of that research and that development, because you have all these emerging technologies happening right now, like AI. Now, right now, I just think it's a buzzword. It's used for stuff, it can do things, but right now, I see it simply as a novelty. It can make new pictures, it can make things, it can teach you math, it can teach you problems, but it's not able to think deeply enough as a human. I've asked it certain physics problems and it's wrong. The reason why it's wrong is the data sets it's being fed are these huge compositories. Now, what they do to get this data is they scalp it off the internet. So every bit of information. Now, I would say that information, in my sense, I think that humans are right. I think humans are mostly right. So I would say that has about 80% right, 20% wrong-ish margin. Now, but you also have trolls. So I'm going to bring that down and say 40% wrong, 60% right. That's pretty good. But when you're asking it a complex and deeper issue, it's not able to solve it because it can't implement different things together. Science can be augmented by AI. In fact, there have been recent developments that have occurred because of AI. There was this, essentially it is an AI that's able to predict the structure of DNA, or I think it was proteins. It was either DNA or proteins, and it was fairly accurate, okay? Fairly accurate. I don't remember exactly what the percentage was. I think it was like 80%. They got it to like 80%, maybe 90% accuracy, which that's pretty good. But what they can do is they can test thousands and thousands of these structures in 1 day, 2 days. Whereas for a human, that would be months of work, and even a year potentially. You can do that in 2 days now. That is really where AI comes in. The augmentation of science. But let's go back on my initial point. The current structuring of academia and just the whole educational system is based upon the premise that something should be presented and you should be able to think it through. Okay, I think especially in education, early education, we need to reiterate the fundamentals. We need to reiterate the most important thing. The most important thing you're going to do is memorize. Without memorizing things, you won't be able to think them through. If you don't know what something is, how do you think it through? Well, you can't really do it in such a sense. So if you memorize something and you are able to have that in your brain. Okay, you can think about it, you can dwell on it, you can improve it and make it make sense to you. Memorization is the basis and should be the basis for education. You should start with memorize the process, think through why did you do this step, why did you do that, and then utilize it or apply it and be able to solve any question pertaining to that. That's really what school should be about. Now, some things like history, English are more history, English, and even in math are more ambiguous. Now, you might say math, ambiguous. Well, math is really just the memorization of steps. In fact, they've proven a link between people who are good at languages and people who are good at math, because math is a language. You memorize these phrases, okay? The phrases being akin to formulas, okay? You've memorized those. You've memorized this rule, this thing. The rules are just grammar rules, same as in any other language, Spanish, French, Chinese, English, all sorts of languages have grammar rules. Math has grammar rules. It says this is true. With this formula, you can solve that. And then history, well, history is a funny thing, okay? You have pure history, okay? That is what happened. That is the events. But I think what humans like is more the story, the narrative that's being pushed because of those events. I think that's more interesting and more intriguing than anything. You can read a book about this battle. There's 10,000 people who died. 500 fought valiantly. You can read all those numbers, all the statistics, every single thing. But what's really interesting is ancient battles and ancient stories. These stories, some of these ancient stories that we've told are from prehistoric times. And they're there for a reason. They stood. They show something fundamental about humanity and us. That's really cool. That's really special. History might seem like this hard, complicated subject, but really it's about reading, acquiring, and thinking through. In English, you have the words, the page, you have texts that maybe you have to read for English class, okay? You read those books for English class, okay? You have your information, you have your history, what happened. So English class is probably the highest level in terms of all those classes, even though it might not seem like it. You have to make all those sorts of connections and critical thinking to be able to even go into English. Math is simply memorization of rules and things to solve. History is simply going to be looking at information and portraying a narrative. English, on the other hand, is reading what happened. You can't cherry pick. You can, but the book's the book. It stands the test of time. It represents the story and what happened, and so you derive the purpose from that. You don't look at this and that and this and that. So it's really fascinating to me that academia has suddenly gone to this dogma, this religion of being just, you're with the science or you're against the science. Science is really something that should be for everyone. A lot of these papers that are published are only going to be read by a few people. A few people in the field who look at the information, use it. Maybe it's looked at later on by some future person, but generally it just sits, it's there, it's archived, it's produced. Maybe someone uses it, maybe someone doesn't. All that work, but for what? What purpose did it solve? Well, it revealed something new about our universe. It revealed something new, something interesting, something that could be utilized potentially for a product. Now, one of the hardest challenges that academia really, I think, is struggling with is going to be funding. Now, there's money out there. There's plenty of money out there. There's plenty. But academia is really about either teaching or relaying information on a specific field. Okay, you could be Professor Jeff of rocks, of painted rocks. Let's make it even more specific. Let's say you could be Jeff of the Western U.S. painted rocks. That's your degree. That's what you specialize in. How many people do you think read that a year? That paper you posted? 2 people probably. 3 people probably. There's probably not many people. So, what I think is science should take that complicated, long, arbitrary paper, and there should be a second paper that's brought up, that's also released, that explains everything nice, clean, and simply. I think that would really help science and really accelerate it, because you explain it nice, clearly, simply. You've provided a very good source. You have your information. You have your years of experience. If someone wants to read something, they can just go right there and say, hey, look at this. This is a good source. They publish data about this, and they're explaining it very simply, very plainly. Okay, so that makes sense to me. Now, oftentimes, published papers are very wrong and just not right and just not true. That happens. Yes, that does happen, but I think that that information sticking around is still going to cause a net positive for society. It's still going to cause someone to go out there and be like, okay, maybe we go explore this topic. Because if they explore it, then they're going out there learning, reading, creating new stuff that hasn't been done before. And so that's really the problem I have with academia in the modern society. Thank you for listening. Have a lovely day. And to be honest with you, this video is long. I didn't think it would be that long. So, if you stayed this long, I love you. Thank you, man.